You are listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast with Buck Joffrey. Get ready to change your life.
Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast coming to you from Montecito, California. And today, before I begin, I want to remind you that there is a website associated with this podcast, and it is called wealthformula.com. Lots of things to potentially sign up for there, including our investor club. If you are an accredited investor, that's something you may consider joining our little group of investors out there and help get some of that lazy money off the table. You can go sign up at wealthformula.com, and that will lead you to an onboarding process. So take a look at that. In addition, there is a group that is a sort of online community for Wealth Formula, and that's called Wealth Formula Network. This is a program that starts out with a course. The course then sort of leads into, or I should say is simultaneously associated with our community, which is online. There's a Facebook group. There's also bi-weekly Zoom video conferences, which I think people have found significantly helpful. It's sort of like the podcast on steroids and interactive. Now, speaking of interactive and all that kind of stuff, let's talk a little bit about how everything is about to change. Or is that true? I don't know. I keep hearing about how the world is going to look radically different soon, and I'm sure you have as well. But what in the world is this radical change anyway, and when's it going to happen? And, I don't know. I'm no expert in technology, but it's clear that the radical changes that we are expecting are probably coming from two emerging technologies. One we've talked about on a number of occasions, which is blockchain. The other is artificial intelligence. Now, blockchain, of course, really defines this thing that people call Web 3.0 or Web 3. We've talked about it before again on the podcast, but essentially Web 3 is the decentralization of various industries such as social media and finance. Think, okay, now Facebook without Mark Zuckerberg, and Facebook is owned by all of its users. It's tokenized. It has no central authority. That's Web 3, right? And that's the kind of thing where I think we're going to continue to see movement towards. I think it's a extremely strong force that it's difficult to stop. You also see that relevant to our space in personal finance with decentralized finance, and we've had shows on that as well. Artificial intelligence is the other technology that's supposedly part of this great disruption that's about to occur. We've seen it in action without thinking about it already. And again, I would just point you to this application that I like to use called WAZE, and this is, I wish this was a sponsorship from WAZE, but it is not. WAZE is an application, basically where, it's taking huge amounts of data that are generated from drivers and putting it into maps and allowing you to get to places with the shortest route and the least traffic. So, that's an example of artificial intelligence. It's sort of weaving its way into our fabric and without us really even knowing that it's artificial intelligence. But I think there's going to be some more blatant things that we're going to see soon. In the last couple of months, for example, a new demonstration of the power of AI has come to surface, and it's widely available. It's called ChatGPT. Now, I actually haven't used it, but I'm kind of eager to give it a try, especially after the interview that I did for this program. But essentially what the idea is that, instead of searching for something on Google and getting a whole bunch of different, answers and references and websites, ask ChatGPT anything and it will give you an answer. Now, ask it to generate a speech on interest rates and it will. Ask it to give you a summary of a book and it will. I might use that one a lot, actually. It's fascinating stuff, and I keep thinking to myself, I wish I had that during college because I probably would have cheated, and it would have made my life a lot easier, and I would have saved a lot of time. But for all the good and interesting things, obviously there is some potential of being dangerous as well. I mean, the problem with technology is that it's growing faster at a faster pace than perhaps we are ready for, and just because these technologies are powerful, it doesn't dissuade nefarious actors. They're just more sophisticated nefarious actors. And that whole thing is going to potentially create a bumpy road ahead. Anyway, this entire space is so complicated that I wanted to talk to a real expert on it, especially although this show is about both blockchain and artificial intelligence. I was really curious about this ChatGPT thing. And so that's what we're going to do in this interview. That's what we talk about. And you are going to hear it right after these messages. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, my guest on Wealth Formula Podcast is Carrie Oberbrunner. Carrie is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author of 11 books in multiple genres, ranging from business to fiction to technology. He's also the founder and CEO of Igniting Souls and Blockchain Life. Carrie, welcome to Wealth Formula Podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here. Excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, me too. I mean, this is it's crazy how quickly things are changing. I've constantly, I try to keep up on this stuff, but it seems like people keep talking about this new digital age that's happening. Yeah. Tell me what this new digital age is. I mean, certainly there's blockchain, but there's also, AI. How would you describe this pivot in technology?
Yeah. So I noticed a change happening. As you mentioned, I have several companies. And about 2019, after running Facebook ads for years, about $50,000 a month, I began to see things weren't working the same way. Yeah. And I said, something's going on behind the curtain, and I don't know what it is, but I'm going to figure it out. And behavior began to shift. And what we began to see is we began to see a pivot from what's called Web 1 and Web 2 to Web 3. And when you ask people what is Web 3, they get really fuzzy and they can't be clear, concise, and direct. And so I just want to give people a definition.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So Web 1 is they create, they own. Okay. So what I mean by that is when Domino's Pizza created a website, they owned it. And it was information and it was a static menu. And we went there and it beat the yellow pages, and we would, be able to look and see what we wanted to eat, and we would order it. But the internet then was what's called read only. So it was informational.
Yeah.
All right. Then comes along Web 2. Web 2 is we create, they own. So what I mean by that is we became the creators. We began to create the tweets, the videos, the posts, the blogs. We began to essentially shape the internet. But who owned it?
Twitter.
Facebook owned
it. Right. Twitter or Facebook.
Twitter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So essentially what we began to see is hey, what's going on here? We're the ones who are doing all the work, and yet they're the ones who own everything. And sure enough, you began to see that mobile evolved. So now the internet became, instead of a static, sit at my desktop, don't bother me, family, I'm surfing the internet. Now it became, Buck, here's the internet, and the internet goes with me. And now instead of multitasking, I'm actually doing switch tasking, which means that I'm lowering my IQ by 40 points, less than being stoned, because I'm actually here and I'm here and I'm there and I'm everywhere. And essentially the attention residue began to happen, and we were not fully engaged. Now we're really split. And a term called digiphrenia existed, where I'm existing on LinkedIn right now. I'm existing on Twitter. I'm existing on Instagram. I have multiple personas or avatars, and you began to see the psychology shift with people. Mm-hmm. I can't be fully present. And now we moved into the attention economy, and we moved into data mining. Okay. Now comes Web 3. Web 3 is we create, we own. Mm-hmm. So what it did,
so decentralization, right? That's the concept of decentralization.
Yes. And with your listeners, DeFi, right? Decentralized finance.
Sure.
So now instead of having the man or the company or the woman, instead of having this centralized ledger, this centralized tech, this centralized platform, currency. I mean, you can go on and on and on. Now it became decentralized, right? Even down to even down to governance. Instead of having a board of directors, now you have what's called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. You begin to see fractionalized real estate, where we can actually take that real estate and we can cut it up into small pieces, represent it with NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which are digital assets, where now you can have somebody, 300 people own a hotel. And how do they verify that they own the hotel? They show their smartphone with their MetaMask wallet, and the MetaMask wallet has an NFT, which is backed by blockchain technology that proves it's one of one. And now all of a sudden I might own part of that hotel, but I can also cash in. And as part of the hotel, I might get 2 free nights. So literally, just to use those simple terms, then we can go deeper. Web 1, they create, they own. Web 2, we create, they own. And Web 3, we create, we own. That's a really easy way to explain it.
That's a really good description. And so with Web 3, people often say, everything's about to change. So
yeah,
what's going to change? Obviously we've seen some things happen, but is there anything that we'll notice, or is it all go sort of under the infrastructure? You know what I mean? In other words, it seems like a lot of technologies happen and we don't really know that they're happening. They just happen, and they're better and they're faster and they're smarter. But is this something fundamentally different that we're going to see? And I guess along this line, and what I want to get into a little bit more, is AI, artificial intelligence. So just a little.
I honestly think everything's going to change. And that might sound like over the top or hyperbole. Let me just give you an examples. Even just from, I brought a little show and tell here. Okay. So even down to the fact that I have a VR headset, Oculus. Now this is clunky. And in about 5 years, we're going to be like, oh my gosh, was that dumb? But let me take another model. And this other model are Ray-Ban glasses. And these Ray-Ban glasses actually have video cameras inside them. Okay. So these look like sunglasses. In reality, I'm actually recording you right now.
Right.
And I'm actually able to take this content and put it onto my social media. And you might say, well, that's what's so big about that? Well, Apple's going to come out with what's called AR glasses, augmented reality glasses, where I could essentially, Dr. Buck, I could look at you and say, oh, Dr. Buck has allowed me with permissions to see where he went to school. I can see what certifications he accomplished. I can see what articles he's written. I can see his friends that he has. I can see where he attended things. And immediately we can have a speed of trust relationship where I can say, oh my gosh, man, you went to the U2 concert, Elevation tour. So did I, and immediately what do people do business with people they know, like, and trust? And so this isn't just theory. Like on LinkedIn, I have no idea if it's the real person or not. Well, LinkedIn has started to incorporate blockchain credentials so that when I click on under licenses and certifications on LinkedIn, I can literally click a button and it can go to blockchain and it can say, absolutely, that person achieved this status or this certificate, and it's verified. So you're starting to see that, now trust. But let's even talk about lack of friction. Because that's what, anytime there's friction, like Uber was disruptive because of the friction to actually hail a cab. Okay. Airbnb was disruptive because it was very hard for people to say, hey, I got a house, I'm leaving for a week. Does anyone want to rent it? So anytime there's friction in the world, technology can massively disrupt it. And right now there's so much friction with IP protection, patents, 3 years, $15,000. There's friction with buying a house. What if Dr. Buck, I had glasses, I could tour the house, I could literally be pre-approved with my MetaMask wallet. The house deed could be transferred as an NFT. If upon purchase, I say I'm in, they can send the deed, which would be verified with the state to see, are there any liens on the house? Is it clear? So anything that you see that has friction right now, could be disruptive.
Yeah, I'm curious about that one too. We've talked about that on the show. I mean, that is definitely some seriously clunky stuff, deeds and that kind of thing. But we've been talking about it, frankly, on this show since 2017 when I first got into blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I'm curious, like, what are the timelines on these kinds of things? Right? You've mentioned a lot of things that make a lot of sense, but you think we're going to see them in the next couple of years? Is it a decade? Or what's your take?
Yeah. I'm always a fast mover, and I like to think things happen faster than they do. Here's what's going to happen. Starbucks announces Odyssey. What is Odyssey? Odyssey is a replacement to their stars, that when you go to Starbucks, you earn stars. What people don't realize is they're actually earning NFTs now.
Right.
So this is kind of what's going to happen. You're going to see diplomas, like literally universities. You can Google this. Universities are saying, why are we just giving our people a paper diploma? Let's give them also a digital asset, which they can put in their wallet. It's better on the environment. It's more secure. You can showcase it and demonstrate it because it's a digital asset. So I think what you're seeing is, you're seeing Nike issue 3 types of shoes. Only digital, which is like my generation, our generation is like, what the heck? Why would I buy a Steph Curry digital shoe for $333? But when we unpack that and we say, oh, look at our kids. Well, we drove up to a party with shoes and they were like, sweet, look at those Air Jordans. Look at our kids though. Our kids were in the pandemic. They could not go outside. So they're showing up virtually. And then when you can flex like every population has ever done, look at that Native American with that feather. Wow. Look at that settler with that gun. I mean, you name it. We've always been a society of flexing, Rolex, whatever you want. But now we're flexing digitally because we are present digitally.
That's a big concept. I think that's harder for some of us Gen X types and older people to understand, because I think these younger generations have so much value to what's in this virtual world rather than just physical stuff. So we can't understand it, but they spend so much time in the virtual world that the line between the virtual world and the physical world starts to blend. And so there's not necessarily this, this idea that that's not real. I'm not going to pay for that because it is real.
It is real. And, I have a son who grew up on Fortnite. So in Fortnite, your characters have skins. And those skins are basically saying, oh, you conquered that boss or you earned that level. So now it's kind of like, we had Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever you want to call it with patches.
Yeah.
We have military with bars. And I'm probably butchering that example because I'm not in the military, but we have a society that adorns, whether it's the academy and you have certain threads, with GPA. We've always done it. And now we're saying, because we're virtual, we're starting to do it. And you're seeing a big fight between Birkenbags physically and Birkenbags digitally and Gucci. And like what I see a lot of these fashion. I see fashion really big into the digital space. I see experiences. So you started to see with the World Cup, they had a metaverse they created. With the tennis, they had a whole competition, like sports, athletes, entertainers. Taylor Swift could have saved a ton of headache and earn a ton more money to bypass Ticketmaster and simply give her Taylor fans an NFT that would have unlocked a token with first to buy access.
Right.
And if people don't think that's a big deal, they almost issued a Congress, whatever you call it, investigation into Ticketmaster.
Right.
Like, this is big stuff. This is millions of dollars.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Bill Gates just said that ChatGPT, and we'll talk about what that is, will change the world, similar to when the internet was invented. You want to tell us, I mean, because there's a lot of this suddenly came out of nowhere, in my view, is sort of discussion about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence.
Yes.
You want to explain exactly what's going on with that?
Yeah. So I'm a publisher. So it would be foolish for me to be like, ChatGPT is going to take away the need for all books. Okay. Because I'd be shooting myself in the foot. But I'll tell you this, I'll go on record and say, if my company is not exploring how to use ChatGPT in terms of research, you still got to make the book the person's story. You're not going to say, "Hey, ChatGPT, write Dr. Buck's book."
Okay.
So
what is it though? Like, if you want to back up, like this might be the first time a lot of people are actually even hearing the words ChatGPT.
So essentially, I have it on my computer right now. But what I can do is I can basically say, ChatGPT, I want you to give me the recipe to cook a chocolate cake. Boom. Recipe. I want you to tell me the book summary of Carryover Runner's Blockchain Life. Boom. I want you to write code for how to do this. What would I do for a video shoot if I wanted to create a commercial on something? Boom. And it's not just a search, it's legitimately ordered thinking. It becomes the best assistant.
Okay, so it is, and this is all coming from a conglomeration of information, ultimately on the internet that's put together with artificial intelligence and putting out the most reliable information. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can even say, I mean, I've been in serious meetings with creators of this and early adopters. You can say, I want you to write a book on this. And then say, and I want it to sound like Dolly Parton. Boom. We're talking
it'll literally write a book for you.
It'll write the outline. And now the question is, because I'm in IP space, the question is, who owns it?
Right.
Because if it's pulling from all kinds of different resources, then you're getting into that. And I also teach adjunct university. Certain universities are banning it. And they're saying, whoa, hold on. Student, you can just come up with a paper and you could give it enough nuances that it is new information. It'll spit out one, and then you can say, make it sound more conversational. Make it sound like from a English. It's called prompts, Dr. Buck. The whole key is prompts. What are you telling the ChatGPT to do? Because that's the key. It's you need to feed it the right command, and then it will produce what you're asking.
I guess one of the questions I would have on that is, okay, so what is, how do we know that what the information is reliable information, that it's actually real? Because this isn't necessarily something that is authenticated in any sort of way. It's actually, just conglomerated, right? So I can see a potential problem there with nefarious actors as well. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
You're seeing people say, and I don't know where your audience stands, let's just say left or right, it doesn't matter. You're starting to see ChatGPT be biased, where you're starting to ask it questions and it now has a slant where, tell me about, I'm just going to throw out, tell me about Black Lives Matter. And will it have a slant? Tell me about the Republican Party, the Democrat Party. So you're starting to see, whoa, is it external truth or facts, or is it now slanted? But I'll tell you what, guess what we've been doing since 2015? Same thing. And that's where the social dilemma, that documentary came out and said, Dr. Buck's screen is feeding him different information than my screen.
Right.
because it's actually becoming preferential to create engagement. So things I love or hate so that I keep coming back, and it got into addictive tendencies and this type of thing. So you are right. Here's another personal AI thing just to throw out. I'm partners, not financially, but philosophically, with a company called Personal AI. Get this. I'm a content creator. You're a content creator. What if you could load all your podcast episodes, all your articles, all your blog posts, everything you've ever done into Dr. Buck's AI, which, by the way, is possible. Now, people can literally engage with you, and they can get your data with your permission 24/7. You could offer coaching, you could offer consulting. Like, this is now possible where we each have our own AI based upon our thought leadership.
And that's like an app or something, or like how would somebody, if I wanted to do Buck Joffrey, carry me around in your phone AI?
Yeah.
Is that like an app, or how does that work?
It is. It's Personal AI.
Oh,
If you go to Personal AI, the founder's name is Suman. He's worked with Google. It's amazing. Like, I literally think, if I'm a business owner, which I am, here's what I begin to now say. Not will I use AI, but how will I use it?
Yeah.
How will I use it? And how can we equip our humans to use it to do the boring work or the mindless work, so that the humans can do only what the humans can do? So that's why I don't believe in this like Terminator, hey, AI is going to just take us all over. I say, look, AI is a tool, just like a smartphone's a tool. Can it be used for good or evil? Absolutely. You can use this to deal drugs and all kinds of stuff, or you can use it to do incredible things. So just a real quick example. I used to live in the nonprofit world. So, I used to work at a church. Guess what? You can ask ChatGPT to write you a new praise song, and it will be theologically correct. I've seen it happen. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
It's crazy, man. Yeah. It's crazy.
I'm eager to check it out myself. You talk a little bit about moving towards a concept called transhumanism.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what that means.
All right, man, this is scary stuff. So transhumanism is literally saying that humans and machines will integrate with each other in order to create a better being. And here's what I want people to think. At first, people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. But it's a spectrum. Right now, there's people with a pacemaker, and the pacemaker actually helps them live. We have people with certain hearing technologies, certain eye technologies for seeing. Well, what happens, Dr. Buck, when somebody loses a leg, which is right now happening, and you can put on a prosthetic limb that is controlled with BCI, brain computer interface, which is controlled by your mind, and that leg can help you run a 1-minute mile and squat 2,000 pounds. Now, we put it in the guy because, hey, his leg, got blown off in the military or whatever. But now, what happens when that's optional? I mean, if you can start telling people, look, do you want to run a 1-minute mile? Do you want to squat 2,000 pounds? Like, that can actually happen now. I dare people to Google antenna man with antenna in his head. This is a real guy who put an antenna literally into his head so that he could, guess what? Feel colors. He goes to the passport in UK and says, I want a picture with my antenna on it. They say, no, that's an apparatus. He fought it. He said, this isn't an apparatus. I can't take it off. It's inside me. They let him have it. He said, guess what? It was made in Sweden. I want dual citizenship. I'm telling you, man, like, I really think that our world is on the edge where our ethics is being outpaced by our technology.
Yeah. Fascinating. Let's talk a little bit about what you do on the consulting side, because all of this is really interesting, and there's certainly business owners involved here. You mentioned, patents and intellectual property and that kind of thing. Talk about some of the other things that, you've been able to help people do,
Sure.
or what you guys provide.
So right now, if you can Google all this stuff and verify it, but we have developed a patent, and our patent. Why did we use a patent? There's two times you should ever have a patent. One is if you're going to sell your company someday, and the other thing is if you're going to borrow up to half your patent portfolio. Okay, so if you're going to borrow money or you sell your company, you should get a patent. Why? Because it's the nuclear weapon of all IP. I mean, it's a 20-year monopoly legally on a certain technology. Guess what? It takes a lot of time and a lot of money to get it. We filed ours. Our technology is patent pending. Guess what our technology is to disrupt patents. So we got a patent to disrupt patents. I know that sounds a little crazy, but here's why. Because with blockchain technology, now think about this for a moment. It'll be a little technological, but your audience, I know they can dig it. All a blockchain is a ledger that's public, that is distributed in computers all over the world so that it cannot be hacked, altered, or have bad actors disrupt it, modify it, this type of thing. In other words, information is verified. It creates a block, which then creates another block and another block. And to actually hack it, you'd have to go back and hack all these computers and go back through the blocks. Okay. So when you mint something on the blockchain, it's essentially, and this is where I want people to realize, like, this technology layers. Cryptocurrency is not blockchain, but crypto needs blockchain to be verifiable. Okay, so this blockchain is like the railroad, essentially. Well, guess what? We've created a process with our patent called Easy IP, where if somebody says, "Hey, Carrie, we've developed a unique process, logo, PDF, book, concept," we can go and we can essentially, through our technology, create a smart contract around it, which creates a permanent timestamp that says that in this point in history, immutable, no one can change it ever, Dr. Buck was the first to file and first to use that IP. Now, why is that important?
Does it make it easier to actually get the patent legally, or does it?
It does. We call it a pre-patent.
Okay.
Because when you file, first of all, I don't think everything should be a patent. Because look, I produce books. If everyone had to publish a book, and then in that book on page 5 is IP and page 10, and it would cost a lot of money and a lot of time. But there's certain things that should be patentable. And I think for that, yes, you need the nuclear weapon, and great, you have the United States backing you. But guess what? January 25th, I testified on a Congress commissioned study with the USPTO to talk about how NFTs are disrupting IP. And this is true. Like it's actually being disrupted because it's a digital asset that is created that nobody else can copy, and it's proved by blockchain, and it's immutable. And so where this goes, Dr. Buck, to make it really practical, in 1975, I was born in 76. In 1975, and there's a great chart on this, okay, but 16% of all IP was intangible. So this tells me that my dad and his generation, the S&P 500 was made up of tangible assets.
Right.
Land, cash, inventory, buildings. You look at the ARC in 2020, it's 90%.
Wow.
90% of the S&P 500 today is made up of intangible. We're talking Apple's not valuable because of this. Apple's valuable because of all the IP around it.
Right.
So all your listeners, they need to realize that if they follow the trend of the S&P 500, 90% of their company is in their IP. And therefore, protecting their IP becomes one of the most important things, especially in this digital world where things can be copied incredibly easy.
Is a focus of your consulting on the legal side, and or are there other things too?
I mean, I'm no lawyer. I'll never present myself that way. I would say that what I do is I help companies create a metaverse and Web3 strategy.
Got it.
And I look at Chase Bank. Chase Bank a year ago put up a bank in Decentraland, a metaverse. Why? Because they realize traffic is there, people are there, and so they're not doing a lot of Chase
advertisement.
Banking. They're not doing a lot of Chase banking in the metaverse. But here's what they do, and here's what I think is really smart. Businesses should have a Web 2.5 strategy. We're not clearly at Web 3 where everyone's walking around with VR and AR goggles, but we're no longer at Web 2 where people are saying, look, there's no such thing as blockchain or NFTs. We're in a Web 2.5. And so I would encourage companies to say, look, how can we use Web 2.5 to be a bridge to get our customers to the next version of the internet?
Fascinating stuff, Kerry, and I could keep going on and on and on here, but we got to stop somewhere. So if people want to get in touch with you, first of all, you've got this book, Blockchain Life, Making Sense of the Metaverse, NFTs, Cryptocurrency, Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality, and Web3. Obviously, that I'm presuming is available everywhere, Amazon, etc. That's right.
Everywhere. I wrote it for my 72-year-old parents. And I say that with all the love in the world that says, look, they were asking me, what the heck are you doing? And I wrote it so that we could understand it.
Sure.
In other words, there's a chart here and it basically says Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, and how do we use it?
Yep.
And that's where I think people are going to have a lot of success.
That obviously would be very useful for people interested in this world. Also, you mentioned some of the services you have. How do people reach out to you if they're interested in potential consulting?
Yeah, so I would just I got 3 websites. My name, kerryoberbrunner.com, theblockchainlife.io, and then ignitingsouls.com. And so either one of those are great. Essentially, at the end of the day, what do? I publish, protect, and promote IP and turn it into 18 streams of income.
Fantastic. Kerry, thanks again for being on Wealth Formula Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. I think this is something that I think you should really keep an eye on. I'm curious about this ChatGPT thing in particular. And, it's probably worth really starting to think about various things that you might be able to do with this technology. And it may also be useful to start thinking about, ways you can monetize this, or ways that you can, figure out how to invest in some companies or things like that potentially are on the forefront of this type of thing. It's certainly an exciting technology, and it'll be fun to see where it leads. That's it for me this week on Wealth Formula Podcast. This is Buck Joffrey signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Wealth Formula Podcast. Visit us on the web at wealthformula.com. The information contained in this podcast are opinions, not fact. As always, consult your own financial team before making any investment. See you next time.